Hey guys, welcome back to another Weird Wednesday. I'm Ashers, and this is
Pat O.
Hello. How was your weekend?
My weekend was good. It was my birthday weekend. I turned 41 on Friday.
Good for
And
you.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's quite the accomplishment. And I didn't have a whole lot to do because I'm still not drinking. So just kind of hung out with the family. But listeners of the show will be happy to hear that I finally got to see Moonfall, a movie that I was very excited to see when it was out in the theater, when it was released in the theater earlier this year. Never got a chance to see because my kid never wanted to go see it, and I wasn't going to go on my own. And my wife doesn't; she doesn't fucking watch that shit with me. But yeah, so Moonfall. I saw Moonfall on Friday, and it was pretty okay as far as end of the world disaster movies go. Um, what was it's definitely like in the same camp as like 2012 or The Day After Tomorrow. But what was kind of interesting about this was that it deals with hollow moon theory, obviously, and also alien megastructures. So whenever I see stuff like that in mainstream film, it's always kind of neat because as somebody that's into this stuff, I'm reading about this stuff regularly anyway. But to have it then be kind of like converted into a plot device for a sci-fi film, I always kind of find that interesting. So,
Okay.
yeah, it was pretty good. Are you a big fan of like the end of the world disaster movies? Do they give you anxiety? Is it kind of like you kind of enjoy the morbidness of it, or like they freak the fuck out of my kid? Like he's got a real issue with them. Um, but I'm the exact opposite. I totally get off on them.
Yeah, I don't really have any type of existential crisis surrounding stuff like that. I don't know
Okay.
why. I just don't really feel any I mean, I've watched them. I mean, I've seen Armageddon, you know.
Well, that's
you know, I
eh,
I saw what is it, The Day After Tomorrow. I don't think I ever did watch that 2012 movie. I mean, what else is there? Zombie movies, I guess those count.
well, Green. There's a movie Greenland that came out that I would say is kind of like one of the high watermarks of the genre. That's with Gerald Butler, and it deals with asteroids are going to hit Earth, and people are trying to get to Greenland because there's an underground bunker there or something that'll allow them to survive it. And so yeah, there's that's more of a drama, you know what I mean? Like 2012
Right.
is kind of interesting. The Day After Tomorrow is mostly just like snow. Like so it's like if
Everything's
you're
fucking
afraid of
cold.
yeah, if you're afraid of the cold, then it's particularly terrifying. But living in the Midwest, like that's like you know.
Right. So I mean, maybe it's just I mean, Independence Day, I guess, maybe, is the same. But
Your boy Will Smith.
my boy Will Smith, right? Exactly. You know. So I mean, that was, that's a good movie. I don't know. Like I said, it just depends on what you consider a end of the world type of movie. I've seen some of them, but it's not like on the top of my to do list when they come out. I think Moonfall does sound interesting. I should probably check that out. So,
It was all right. Yeah.
I did. Well, the not I forgot to mention on last week's show, but we keep doing these terribly long intros, and that's okay. I think people like them actually for some reason. You guys are fucking weird. But anyway, the last weekend, the weekend before this weekend, I watched two movies, and that is, let me tell you something. Hell must have frozen over because that does not happen. But I watched both the new Scream, um,
Oh, okay.
which I enjoyed. I thought it was
Yes.
a good love letter to the original and to the fans, and I think that they just need to fucking just end it already. I mean, if they don't, I'm not one of those people. If they continue to make Scream movies, guess what? I'll continue to fucking watch them. I don't care how bad people say they are. I'll watch it.
They have a release date for the next one. It's like the last weekend of March next year. They're probably gonna crank them out every year now, like fucking Saw movies.
I mean, I can't give a spoiler, but there's something that happens in the movie that pisses me the fuck off. But I liked it for what it was. And that's fine. Just like I guess a lot of people shit all over Halloween Kills, and I fucking loved that. I think that's my favorite Halloween movie now was Halloween Kills. It was fucking great. Um And just like people shit all over the Child's Play reboot with Mark Hamill, I liked it a lot. So I'm not critical about that stuff. I'm easy to please. But I like the new Scream, and then I also, of course, watched the new Jackass movie, um, which was good. I I learned about myself when I watched it that I don't like nostalgia. It makes me feel bad, and I don't really know why that is. Maybe it's because I know I had a fucked up childhood, so you know,
Yeah.
the things that should be good and happy are just overshadowed by the stuff that wasn't. I don't know if it's because I feel like I've wasted my time. I don't really know what it is about nostalgia, but it makes me feel very uncomfortable. And as funny as the new Jackass was, and it's good. Listen, if you just got some time to kill and you just want to laugh and watch some old men and new young people hurt themselves, do that. Which I found interesting because the original crew didn't do a lot of their own stunts. It was like these new guys that they're trying to like pass the torch to, which I didn't really care about any of those people. I had no connection to any of them.
Well, Steve-O did the Dick Bees.
He did do the Dick Bees. And there was some, yeah, there were some good stunts in it. It was okay. I mean, I'd watch the new Jackass again. Those are movies you just throw on and just kind of not pay attention to. I enjoyed it for what it was. Again, if they make more, and even if it's none of the original guys, I would still watch it. Because I'm just that person. But yeah, it made me feel weird about myself. So
It was empowering to me because I'm a couple years younger than them. So to see, to
to see
see
them
Johnny
still doing that
Knoxville
stuff,
like
yeah.
rock the gray hair and be like still like getting chased by fucking bulls and stuff,
Yeah.
like it made me like, hey, you know what? You still fucking got it. You're still dangerous, even though
Yeah.
you're over 40. Because I mean, you want to talk about like ageism and stuff. Like you get to a certain age and you kind of feel like you're not as important, or you're not as virile, or you're not as strong,
Sure.
or all these other things that people feel. And with women, it's even worse. When you talk about a woman over 50, and you might as well be talking about a corpse, right? And that's unfortunate because there's hot ass women in their 50s and 60s, and that's right, I said 60s. But it's true, and women shouldn't be marginalized, and kind of like their sexiness shouldn't be taken away from them just because they hit a certain age you know and it's the same thing with men, like for especially for men that like Jackass. Like you want to feel that you're every bit as reckless and dangerous than you as you were when you were like in your 20s, and seeing those guys do that at this age was very empowering. And I know that's not like for you it's like a nostalgia thing, but for me it was like, fuck yeah, I can hang bees off my dick and fucking
You
with the
know,
best of them.
yeah, and that was like something I used to watch America's Got Talent a lot, and I don't really watch. I don't have time to watch shit like that anymore. But I used to really enjoy it. And one of the competitors on there was this woman that was like fucking 80 years old that was dancing, and it was like ballroom dancing, but it was like intense ballroom dancing. And it made me realize that you can fucking absolutely do anything that you want to do as long as you just got to train your body to do it. And even though you're older, it might take a little bit more practice. You can still fucking do that shit. Like nothing's stopping you but you. And so I suppose that part kind of does make me feel good, but I also felt like I was kind of squandering my youth a little bit. Maybe I should put bees on my dick and I'll feel younger. I don't know.
Your
Um,
giant clit.
I mean, no, that
Your
doesn't
abnormally
sound.
large fucking,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, you know how big that thing. You can see it through the pants. That thing.
Jesus Christ. I know. I thought you had a boner.
Yeah.
What's going on down there?
Everybody does. I know. It's fine.
If I had the choice between banging Helen Mirren or like a 24-year-old Instagram hoe, I would pick Helen Mirren.
But she's
You know,
probably got a lot more experience. She knows what she's doing.
she's got some big cans on her too.
She
Yeah.
knows what she wants. I
Mm,
mean, so
yeah.
anyway, um, yeah, my weekend, it was okay. I saw an old friend, and that's always very fun. See your old friends. Go visit your old friends. I don't care if you haven't talked to them in 10 years. Go see what that old friend is doing and go visit. It was a good time. We did a lot to talk about. Unlike the usual friends that you see in your life, where you kind of don't have anything to talk about because you see them all the fucking time, right? That was really fun to catch up. She is actually a longtime listener of the show. I didn't know
Whoa.
that. I thought
What's
that
her
was
name?
her name's Jessica.
Hey, Jesse.
Yeah, she's good people. We used to do all kinds of crazy things together, and she's married now with 2 kids, and but still very much herself, which was great. It was a fun time. But Yeah, when I walked through the door, I'd never met her husband, had never met her children. You know, like I said, I really haven't talked. I've seen this person like almost 10 years. And she introduced me to her husband. She's like, oh, "This is my famous friend Asher's." And I thought that was really wholesome. And I was like, "Oh my god!" I was like, I'm like a Z-list celebrity at best." And her husband was like, "Hey, famous is famous." No, you know what? I love that attitude. So I'll take it. But anyway, it was nice to catch up with people. Like I said, definitely catch up with friends. We talked a lot about the weird, of course. Everybody's fascinated by that, and I'm sure we'll have more weird stories in the future. So that's interesting. But she started talking about her dad. I'm gonna tell this real quick. Her dad, my first apartment that I ever moved out into, her dad lived there, and like we used to do drugs together. Like,
Okay. You moved in with her dad?
I didn't move in with her dad. We lived in the same apartment complex.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Right, and so, like, we wouldn't do, like, crazy we'd, like, smoke pot or whatever. I think, like, one
Mhm.
time we had a party and, like, somebody was outside puking off my balcony, and her dad shows up and, like, gives the puking person a beer and was like, "This will help," so we used to kinda party together. So I live in an apartment now, and, like, her and I are just she's like, "Oh, yeah." She was like, "My dad, she's living in her dad's old house. Him and his wife moved into an apartment, and she's like, "Yeah, he's living over on, she was like, "Well, kind of by where you live at now." And I was like, "Oh, really? Where? What street?" Her fucking dad lives on my street again. I had no idea. Like, dude, I just can't like get away from your dad. Maybe I should go party with him. I don't know. So that was kind of just funny coincidence. I got no desire to do drugs with the man again, but hey, the offer's there, I guess. So anyway, that was my weekend. So not too exciting. A couple of things that I did though. I did go on to a show called Paranormal Patio. And admittedly, when I do this a lot, I don't listen to the shows that I get invited to go on, and I probably should, right? I've gotten really lucky so far, and I've been on some really great shows, but who knows what I'm walking into? So I go on this paranormal patio show, and it was good. It's a really good episode. You guys should definitely go check it out. We talked about everything. I mean, everything. But we also experienced a synchronicity in real time. And again, I think you should just go listen to the episode to figure out what that synchronicity is. But cool guy, very cool show. You should be listening to it. Um, of course, if you're not listening to Monster Radio, well, why not? I mean, we got I think 4 episodes now over there. We're getting ready to come up with the 5th episode, which is going to be about the Jersey Devil. If you guys liked hearing us talk about the Jersey Devil over here, then go listen to me and Ryan talk about the Jersey Devil over there on Monster Radio. That'll come out this week. Um, what else? Nothing else really for me to push and promote. Anyway, I guess I'll get on to the news. Does that sound good?
Sure.
So, big news for the Nessie fans out there. There has been yet another Loch Ness Monster sighting, the first one of the year, in fact.
Mm.
Which happened okay, so I'll start with this. On March 23rd, there was supposedly the first Nessie sighting that happened. Somebody was watching the Nessie live cam from the Loch Ness Monster Sightings.com website. Posted down below, of course. It's a great resource. And they thought that they had seen some weird things in the water. Initially, the sighting registry had registered it as a legit sighting, but has since removed it, saying that they think that what was actually seen were a couple of wakes made by boat. So they so that this website, they do investigate their purported sightings, and they only put stuff up that they think are legitimate sightings. So they did remove that one, which I think is really responsible of them to do. But they did record this one. So on March 30th, a couple of filmmakers were down at the loch, making a documentary about the weird happenings there. And they allegedly saw Nessie, they believe to be Nessie, I guess, chilling with the water there in the early morning. So, I don't know. It poses a lot of really interesting theories. Did they really see Nessie? And if they did, why didn't they catch it on camera? I don't know. They just acted like, oh, we were too late. I think there's pictures. Yeah, they posted pictures,
Yeah.
which, just look like any other Nessie pictures. Just something in the water that you can't identify, really. Just looking at it, who knows what it was? Could have been fish. Could have been Nessie. But it is now an official sighting. It's the first official sighting of the year, and it's the first one in 2022. So somebody had originally brought the first one to my attention, the March 23rd one, and we kind of started talking about how 2021 was a record-breaking year in sightings. We know we've tracked it on the show here.
Hmm.
So then what happened? Why did the sightings just all of a sudden stop? And we hadn't had any more. Well, to be honest with you, I think that it falls in a line with, if this thing is real, then clearly it has some type of migratory pattern. It's been cold in those waters. Maybe now sightings are going to start picking back up now that it's starting to warm up outside. I'm really interested to kind of track that and see what happens. I don't know, Pat, what do you think?
I'm glad we're still talking about Nessie. I mean, at least there's, the whole Nessie thing reminds me of something that my friend Janine told me that she likes dating guys with facial tattoos because she feels like they won't have a fear of commitment. And the Nessie thing kind of reminds me of that. Like, there's a whole bunch of,
Okay.
evidence. Like, we keep having sightings and we have all this stuff there, but is any of it really worth anything?
Yeah. There's
you know,
correlation, causation. Yeah, sure. I get it.
it's like you could say Nessie is like probably one of the most well documented, or like just kind of like there's all this stuff for this one specific, potentially even the same creature. Like, no one's saying, everyone's willing to concede that there's multiple Bigfoots running around out there, right? No one thinks there's
Sure.
just a fucking Bigfoot, but people think that Nessie is Nessie, right? It's one specific creature that there's been a whole lot of pictures and a whole lot of evidence and a whole lot of effort putting into documenting. And you think that after all of that, that it would amount to something, and it really still hasn't. And that's why, like, I make the facial tattoo comparison. Like, hey, just because someone has some shit written on their face in ink doesn't mean they're not afraid of commitment. Uh, oh, I don't know. It's I saw those pictures on Tobias's website. That's where I came across the story, Singular 14, and it was all right. I mean, I don't know, just some shit in the water.
Yeah, some shit in the water. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's what it always is. It's some shit in the water. If it was anything more, we wouldn't be talking about it. We'd be all listening to them talk about it on ABC News or whatever. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with
what are you
that.
gonna do?
Um,
But I don't. I'm glad we have cameras on that. But I think the fact that we have cameras on there, because it's like webcams that are set up like 24/7
oh yeah.
streaming, right? Dude, if there was anything there, we would have caught it by now. You
Well,
know what I mean?
people say that they have. It's not coming up out of the water. And I mean, realistically, if it just depends on what you think Nessie is. If it's a plesiosaur, it doesn't have the physical structure of the neck to be able to hold its head out of the water like that. It's not possible. It can kind of float on the surface, but it can't look like the surgeon's photograph. Is what science says allegedly. What we know now about plesiosaurs is that they can't do that. So I mean, just because it hasn't completely came out of the water yet. But again, my favorite stories are like the Nessie coming out of the water and walking across the street and shit. I love that. And we haven't seen that on these webcams. So I don't know. Again, we'll just keep watching. I mean, what choice do we have, right? I mean, we'll just continue to see what it might be.
Hmm.
Of course, there's the Nessie eel theory, and it could just be a large species of eel, which is why we don't actually see it, break the water like that. Which would be cool. And if they exist, I think that they have migratory patterns, and they they only come to the lock when the water's warmer. So
I like the idea that she's the ghost of a dinosaur.
you like that
Like,
one?
that's my new thing now, because that was like something they mentioned on Hellier, was the
Yeah.
that that Sasquatches were ghosts of cavemen or some shit. Like, oh my god, I never fucking thought of that.
Ryan fucking told me that they're called phantomals, and I told him to shut the fuck up. I mean, I know it's a real term, and I get it. I get what people are saying, but okay,
That's disrespectful that you would talk to him like that.
you're right. That's
I'm gonna
mean.
stick up for him. Ryan, I got your back. She needs to keep her fucking Italian mouth shut.
So you
Who the
always
fuck
talk
she
about it.
thinks?
I don't know why people think I'm mean or intimidating. I'm so nice.
Oh my god, run in your fucking mouth.
I did. I was so pissed off. I was like, no, no, don't fucking say phantomals to me ever again. Like,
I can imagine you talking with your hands. I want the listeners out there for the rest of the show. This is a thought experiment. For the rest of the show, I want you to imagine Asher's talking with her hands when she says everything.
I just went to Yeah, wait till we get on camera, then everybody will see it. And like, oh, she really is Italian. Okay.
She does that like with the fucking. I'm making the gesture right now. You know what I'm talking about? You know what gesture I'm making? Of
Oh, I
course
know
you
what
do.
you're talking.
It's the same one you're making, right?
Yeah, it does very much. Yeah.
The fucking little hand, like, hey.
But anyway, so that's the Nessie sighting that happened recently. Will there be more? Probably. And will we talk about it? Of course we will.
Yes.
That's what we do here. Another notable newsworthy, I guess. A blast from the past happened. A mystery corpse washed up on the beach of Queensland, somewhere in Queensland. That's in Australia, if you don't know. And a lot of people were comparing this thing to a like a reptilian type of corpse with a really long, weird tail. And do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it was the same thing as that
The
Monat.
Montauk Monster.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes, 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 yes. Yeah, I
yeah.
saw that.
And if people don't know, the Montauk Monster happened back, I think it was 2007. That was like when I was.
No.
Yes, it was, sir. Yes, it was, because I was a teenager and that I wanted to be a cryptozoologist, and I never thought I would be, and here I am. So
Hold
anyway,
on. You keep talking. I got to Google that because I could have swore that happened when I was in height, maybe in my dimension.
in your
Uh, yeah,
timeline,
before the fucking split happened.
are you having a
July 20. Oh my God, July 2008. No way.
Ooh, I was so close. That was good. Yeah, 2008, I guess. See, I was right, kinda. But anyway, it was very this new corpse, very reminiscent of the Montauk Monster. If you haven't Googled it, trigger warning, I guess, if you don't like bloated animal corpses. Look it up. Weird fucking creature washed up on the beach in New York. People thought that it could have been like an experimented on animal because of the laboratory there on Montauk Island or whatever.
Dude, I gotta call Mandela Effect audible on this right now. There's no fucking way this happened in 2008.
I'm telling you, it did.
I would have been 27 years old. No. I've known about that since forever. Because Montauk was supposedly where they were using portal technology and Bigfoot came through or some shit. Like they were trying to. There's a whole that base that there's an island that's a military installation out there,
Right.
and that's what they think the thing escaped from and washed on shore on the civilian side of the beach.
The
The
military
civilian side,
installations, I mean, all of that has been around. That's been a story for way longer than the creature that washed up on the beach.
right? And supposedly that's where they were working on time travel, and they were trying to fuck around with time travel, and they opened up a portal, and like monsters came through and shit, and they had to fight it. I gotta look into that. I swear to God, I've known about this for longer, but now that I think about it, I don't know how much earlier it could have been because then there was no internet. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like
that's true.
there really was no internet before 2000, 2001.
I saw
Not where.
this. Yeah, I mean there was, but not like it is. Like it was even then. Actually, like, internet in 2008 was different than it is now. Um, I saw the Montauk Monster story break on Cryptomundo. Like I said, I woke up and checked it every fucking day of every day of my life. And the woman who took the pictures of it did not gather. She said that like a weird government entity, which is kind of fitting for the show, came and gathered
Right.
the corpse, so then she couldn't. But a lot of people kind of landed on it was probably just a raccoon, right? And just because of the bone structure and things like that. So this new creature that washed up, very reminiscent of the Montauk Monster. The skull does look very weird. I kind of called it. I called it firsthand as soon as I saw it. Somebody tagged me in a post about it. I said, that's a possum. Not an opossum, but a possum, an Australian possum. And they're different. And just because, I know about skulls sometimes because I'm that person. And anyway, so then I was like, let me go look it up real quick because it does look weird. The skull looks very weird and reptile-like. But yeah, when you look up a possum skull and compare it to that corpse, it's a dead-on match. So now articles are going around saying that it's just a possum, guys. The long tail and the skull really give it away, and it probably is just a possum. But of course, this was just caught by some Instagrammer who took a picture of it, posted it, and was like, "Is this an alien?" Like, no, it's a dead possum, dead bloated waterlogged possum is what it is.
Right.
With some decay, and that's probably all. But I think people, like I said, several people have tagged me in this article, and I'm sure you guys want to hear the hot take here yourself. Now, of course, there's no DNA evidence gathered from it, so who knows? Could be an alien dressed as a possum. But
They've been known to do that from time to
They
time.
do that, yeah. I mean, they like to dress up and play possum or raccoon or whatever and wash up on our beaches because they got nothing better to do. I don't know. But that's my take on it. So, Pat, what do you think? You got any takes on what it might be?
No, I'm not zoologist, crypto, or otherwise. So I don't fucking know. I know they got weird shit down in Australia.
You know what it is most definitely?
What?
Without a doubt, it's a corpse.
Huh?
Without a
I
doubt.
my head's still spinning about the Montauk monster because I could have because if for me, it's just so weird. It's just that's so weird to me. I don't know. How the hell your people?
Maybe we'll do the Montauk Island. I put it on the list for ideas in this
Yeah,
conversation
that'd
because
be a fun one to do. Yeah.
people talk about that one, why not? Okay. Well, so should we get into tonight's topic?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm excited. I've been so excited about this because this is a good one. This is one that is very near and dear to me because of all of my research, of course. But we're going to talk about the Men in Black. Pat, before wow, 2 Will Smith movies in one episode, I just realized. Um very, very cool. But before this episode, Pat, did you really know much about the Men in Black? Did you have to
Oh
do a lot of
yeah.
research? Okay, good. Good.
Yeah, it was kind of they've been an integral part of the UFO phenomena since as long as I've been following it. I'm sure there was a sightings episode about it. Where exactly I first got exposed to them, I do not know. And it's interesting because in doing my the research for this week's topic, alongside the book that I was reading, um, The Complete Secret Cipher of the UFO Nauts by Alan Greenfield, which is something that I picked up because of Hellier. I actually, the one good thing to come out of me watching Season 1 was I made a list of all the books that they mentioned, and I picked up a couple of them. I'm starting to make my way through them. Is that I kind of the different theories about the Men in Black, and I'm sure we'll get to that in due time. But
Oh yeah.
my kind of default perception was that they were more terrestrial,
Okay.
and that they were just a branch of like the CIA or something that was,
Sure.
you know what I mean. And there's actually more supernatural, or I guess you know like non-terrestrial explanations for them.
Sure.
There's actually a lot.
Yeah.
There's a, so that'll be interesting. But yeah, that was kind of my at what I thought of it first. One of my favorite X-Files episodes. Have you seen the whole series, or are you just kind of like tangentially familiar with them? I know it's kind of like before your time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of I mean, I don't like I said, I've seen episodes, but
One of my favorite X-Files episodes. It's a non-mythos episode, but it has to do with the Men in Black, and it stars Alex Trebek. Yes, Alex Trebek and Jesse the Body Ventura as Men in Black, and it's a played for laughs episode. It's very jokey, but has some great. Oh, it really has some great explanations and theories about the UFO phenomenon and whether or not just the whole thing. You gotta track it down. Just check out like Alex Trebek X-Files, and it'll tell you the episode and the season and episode number and all that stuff. And then whatever streaming service is hosting it, watch it. It's groundbreaking. It's hysterical, and it's very, very thought provoking. Um, I don't know why I just did that whole thing. But
okay, well, I'm gonna start over for people that
okay, I'm sorry I
know.
fucked up your.
No,
I know
it's
this is
okay.
important to you. I'm sorry.
I should have sent you my notes, maybe. But for people that don't know who the Men in Black are for whatever reason, basically, they are an organization, a group of individuals, whether terrestrial or not, that go around and make contact with people who have experienced particularly ufological experiences and silence them. Like for whatever reason, that seems to be their main mission. And we'll kind of get into all of this. Now, the Men in Black have been called to question because their origin story kind of seems suspicious and has been put down as a hoax forever. So the first real Men in Black report came from 1947, actually, where this fella by the name of Harold Dahl said I guess he was a sailor or something, and he was on his boat patrolling this area. It's called what is it, Maury Island incident. If you want to look more into it, I'm not
Hmm.
going to go into too much detail, but he's on his boat and he sees these six donut shaped craft, and one of the craft starts like puking all over him or something. It starts like exploding stuff
Right.
everywhere.
Killed his dog.
It killed his dog. It injured his son
Right.
with
Yeah.
its supersonic extraterrestrial puke.
Hmm.
And, so of course he was very freaked out. And he took some of the debris because it had landed on his boat and took it to his employer and was like, hey, my guy, this is weird. I don't know what this is, but it's weird. His employer, a man by the name of Fred Krisman, ended up taking it and started talking to like a UFO sci-fi writer journalist guy by the name of Ray Palmer, which again you can look up. He's got a whole history of shit.
Yes, of Fate magazine and the Shaver,
Yeah,
the Hollow Earth stuff, which I have always wanted to talk about too. But yes,
right. And so he takes it over to him, and Ray calls in another guy by the name of Kenneth Arnold, and they both look at the debris and they're like, this doesn't seem as fantastical as you guys made it sound. Um, so in the meantime, Dahl claims that he was visited by a couple of men in black suits and had threatened him and told him to not talk about this incident. And he had also photographed, he had pictures of the craft, and he said that the men altered the photograph so that he couldn't share it
yeah.
with anybody.
But did you see an explanation of how they did that, or like,
No.
because I read that online too, that they altered the photographs. But I was like, wait a minute, like, like he had the pictures in his hand and they touched it and the picture changed, or
I guess he didn't really even I'm sure there's detail about that out there somewhere, but I
I didn't
didn't
see
find
any.
any that
Yeah,
was readily available, but he just said
right.
that they
Yeah.
altered what he said was they fogged his photograph.
Mm,
So it definitely sounds like it was some type of supernatural. It wasn't like they took a marker and just colored over it. You know what I mean? Like it
right.
sounds like
Yeah.
it was something that happened in some type of metaphysical way.
Mm,
So then, like I said, back to Palmer and Arnold, they contact the army and they go, "Hey, you guys, check out this debris that this guy got from allegedly this UFO encounter." And they're like, it doesn't look great, but yeah, we'll take it. This is where it gets fucking weird because these two army men on their way back to San Francisco, they were in Tacoma, Washington. On the way back to San Francisco, their fucking plane crashed and they died,
mm.
and allegedly the debris with it. But at that point the FBI got involved and they were investigating the matter, and when they went to Dahl to ask him about it, he said, "No, I made it up, it was all fake." So they ended up classifying that incident as a hoax, and they said that the plane crashed due to some type of engine failure. However, years later, Dahl came back out and said, "No, it wasn't fake. I just got scared because those men threatened me. Things got weird, and I recanted my story." So, still kind of up in the air, but again, this is just the very condensed version of that incident. This is a whole rabbit hole that maybe we'll talk about on its own episode. But anyway, Pat, thoughts on that topic, on that incident?
Yeah, that's one of the more famous ones. If you look on, there was a movie. It's part of Project Blue Book, and there was a movie came out called Project Blue Book that dramatized some of the cases in there, and that's one of them. So that they actually Hollywood did like
Sure.
a reenactment of that, which is worth checking out. Um,
Because the whole thing in Other Ties, what's his name? I believe Ray Palmer was the one that, he was studying UFOs because he had his own encounter, and that's where the term flying saucer had come from.
right.
And so, I mean, and then also, of course, the first encounter with the Men in Black. So, it's a big story. I mean, there's a lot to it. But that's just kind of for time's
There's a
sake.
lot. There's a lot to it, but there's something interesting that like I there there's a shift that happens about this time, and with I'd say within a 20-year span, right? Between when this stuff starts happening and the Betty and Barney Hill era, right? From there forward, where you see aliens kind of go from being people or spacemen and to being just like grays.
Okay.
And the Men in Black kind of bridge that, right? So like if you look at like alien like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, right? Like 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 one-on-one, like, face-to-face contact with an extraterrestrial being. If we believe that the Men in Black are otherworldly, and we'll just put it like that for now, ultra terrestrial, whatever, then this is interesting because this has them walking and talking and interacting with us in broad daylight, right? And that's something that you kind of saw back in the day when you had spacemen with names, when aliens had names, right? Like Indrid Cold, like Valiant Thor, right? Like people like that were like, oh, I met a spaceman and this is what his name was and this is where he was from, right? And kind of what things shift to at some point. Because I don't feel like Men in Black are a thing anymore. Like,
Oh, they are.
are they, people are still getting sightings
Oh
and still
yeah.
getting encounters with
We'll
them?
talk about them, but yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like that was it's something that kind of was like a thing for a period and was kind of, but kind of became less of one. Like I always wondered, like, so if these things are, if it's a government, logically, you'd almost want to say that they were a government agency because that's why they show up so sporadically. If these things were tied with every time there was a UFO sighting and they're trying to silence a witness, then there'd be as many Men in Black sightings as there are UAP sightings. And there's not, right?
So
How many
go ahead.
people report UFO sightings and then have a follow-up encounter with the Men in Black? If you were to, and I don't know what that number is percentage-wise, but it's got to be really small. 2%, 5% maybe, you know?
We're not there yet. So
Ah,
we're not
this is
there
why
yet.
you just talk. You
You're
just
getting
talk, and I will. Let me know. Don't just talk. I'm gonna be quiet now. I'm sorry.
no, you get ahead of yourself. Let's
I keep fucking this up. I know this
let's
is
present
important to
the
you. I keep
case
fucking this
first.
up.
Let's
I'm
present
so
the case.
enthusiastic.
Then
All right.
we'll theorize, right? And we'll break it apart. All right.
Okay. All right.
Let's throw it all on the table. Okay.
All right. All right.
So there was that incident, right? So I'll tell you a couple of other notable things about that incident. That incident predates the Roswell crash by 1 month, almost exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It also predates when Men in Black were popularized, which would have been, which of course you guys are going to love, the Mothman flap of 1966 to 67. So by 20 years, right? It wasn't really a popular term until 20 years later. But we'll get there. Another really notable, and again, these aren't. I can't even begin to scratch the surface of all of the Men in Black encounters that have been out there. But I really wanted to give you guys the ones that I feel like held the most water and had a very interesting history, and that you could potentially look into yourself. So the next one that I thought was interesting was what is that noise? Do you hear that?
No. What do you hear?
You didn't hear that?
No.
That's so weird. I wonder if that'll pop up on the recording. It was weird.
What'd
Anyway,
you What'd you hear?
it was like, I don't know what it was. It was weird. It was like a weird static for a minute. Okay, well, anyway, I'll continue. So the next one is about a guy named Albert Bender. And he is a very notable part, again, in ufological studies. He actually founded the International Flying Saucer Bureau back in, I believe it was 1952. I didn't really, include too many dates. Again, I'm sharing Cliff Notes versions of these things. Albert Bender, when he made this group, he ended up, which had actually heavy hitters in the community like Gray Barker, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. If you don't, what are you doing listening to the show? You need to read some books. But anyway, before he had any super weird encounters, he started experiencing really weird mystery illnesses. He said that he was actually getting telepathic messages and that were threats. He was receiving strange phone calls. Remember those strange phone calls because they'll come back again. And then in November of 1952, he was leaving the theater, And when he walked out of the theater, he noticed an individual staring at him wearing all black clothing, but the individual had glowing eyes. And the guy kind of followed him home, and he just went home and nothing really happened. But then in July 1953, he was explicitly visited by three men who communicated with him telepathically and told him to stop publishing his work. With his organization, the International Flying Saucer Bureau, he was saying that he had a groundbreaking document that he was going to publish with the newsletter that came along, if you remember the group. And so he got visited by these three men. They said, "You're not going to publish this." And they actually, there's that noise again. That's so weird.
So where did he make the where did he make the claim that he was going, or where did he say that he was going to publish? So he's going to publish something in his newsletter,
Yeah.
but where did he say that he was going to publish something in his newsletter?
Well, publicly. I mean, he'd go on like talks, they'd have meetings, things like that. I mean, it's not like he also seemed to have kind of like an oddities museum. It was just his home. And like he was like obsessed with like oddities and curiosities, shrunken heads and things like that. And so people would come and like tour his home and things. So he talked to a lot of people. He was a very social person. So I'm not sure where exactly he was maintaining this. I mean, people would write articles about him, and then that news would spread and whatnot. He'd be like, "Hey, join this group because I post this newsletter called the Space Review, and I'm going to share this groundbreaking article and about UFOs and aliens, and we know what they are, and here's what it is." So the three men show up. They tell him don't publish it. They actually take his paper and don't let him publish it. And at that point in time, very shortly after, he actually ended up closing the International Flying Saucer Bureau, which was weird because it's not like this was not a notable group. I think at one point in time he had like 600 members or something like that. I mean, it was big. It was a big organization. But he closed down the bureau, and he did put out a final newsletter. And what he ended up saying in that final newsletter was, I'll read it out. At the back end of it, he said, "The mystery of the flying saucers is no longer a mystery. The source is already known, but any information about this is being withheld by orders from a higher source. We would like to print the full story in Space Review, but because of the nature of the information, we've been advised in the negative. We advise those engaged in saucer work to be very cautious." So that was kind of what everybody knew at the time. And again, this was from 1952 to 1953. Bender did eventually write his own book about that entire situation. It's called Flying Saucers and the Three Men. And he does make some really wild claims about these men in black. He talks about how they spoke telepathically. They had these glowing eyes. They could levitate. And various other incidences. So again, Cliff Notes, if you guys want to hear more about that, just go look up the guy. Go read his book. He did put it out there. So anyway, that's the story of Albert Bender and his journey with the Men in Black. He was pretty much silenced out of this information, so he says.
It's interesting in a lot of these stories, just I'll call it now, you'll see there'll always be three of them. That's another reoccurring thing that I didn't pick up on right away, but that kind of presented itself through my research is that, yes, of course, they're all black and sometimes they drive cars from different periods of time and blah, blah, blah. But the number three that they pop up in numbers of three. So.
Oh, yeah, almost always. What was it that, Bender, maybe he was biting off more than he can chew. Maybe he just was drumming up this big groundbreaking paper that he was going to publish that was released from the government, and maybe he didn't have anything at all, and this was his way of pulling out. Could be.
Don't pull out.
Don't pull out. No, you should probably pull out. You probably should pull out. I'm a very big supporter of pulling out. But so there's that. There's the Albert Bender story, but there's more. Not to his story. We're pretty much done there. Another big one that I wanted to bring up was, of course, John Keel. Because even though it was Gray Barker who actually coined the term Men in Black, it was John Keel that made the Men in Black popular. So John Keel shows up in West Virginia. Actually, John Keel went to Point Pleasant, not Point Pleasant, but he went to West Virginia to study the Indrid Cold story. Keel was a
Mm-hmm.
journalist in New York, and he ends up going to study Indrid because he'd heard about that through the grapevine. While he's there in West Virginia, he hears about the Scarberry Mallet Mothman sighting, which I've told plenty of times on the show. And then so the Mothman stuff kind of started happening, and Keel stayed for a while in West Virginia to study the Mothman stuff, hence the Mothman prophecies. But John Keel himself had multiple encounters with the Men in Black, and he acknowledges that he had multiple encounters, and in the way of like being followed by strange black cars, the strange phone calls, just like Bender was getting, constant, all hours of the night. Um, he actually was a victim to. There are reports of like Men in Black photographers who just go around taking pictures of people or like their properties and just kind of leave and don't really say anything, stalking people just to take their pictures and things, and then, like I said, leaving. So Keel was a victim of that. So he, you know, understood that this was happening. Oh, and he would get reports from people. Somebody would call and say, "Hey, I saw the Mothman and I reported it to you, and now the Men in Black showed up at my house, and they're here now." Keel would rush over there. I mean, he would actively try to chase these people to talk to them. Keel was, I'll give you that much. Keel was a storyteller and an embellisher, but he fucking put the legwork in. Like, he would jump in the car at all hours of the night, go try to track these dudes down. And he did that shit all the time with all of his research. So good for him. And he'd never caught him, of course. He never caught up to him. And but Keel also noted on very honestly that there were people in Point Pleasant that thought that John Keel himself was a Men in Black, and that so he could see how, with all this talk of the Mothman sightings happening, how a lot of people that were reporting these Men in Black sightings or encounters could be mistaken identity for just regular people trying to report on the happenings. But he did think that they were very real. Um, Also notable for the Mothman time, and my favorite my favorite Mothman encounter and Men in Black story in one is a lady by the name of Connie Carpenter, who in November of 1966, the very beginning of the Mothman sightings, saw the Mothman, who was kind of actually this almost the same thing as the Scarberry Mallet incident. She was driving and the Mothman was beside her car. She is one of the very few people that actually saw the Mothman's face. And the only way that she really described his face was that it was horrible. She's never actually recanted the details of it, but there's kind of a reason for that. Because a few months later, in February of 1967, she was walking, and she was an 18-year-old girl. I'll say that much. She was young. She wasn't some old lady. She was walking to school, and a gentleman of Men in Black was standing outside of a black Cadillac and kind of motioned her over. And she thought maybe he was just somebody that was lost, needed directions or whatever. And he tried to kidnap her, tried to force her into the car. And she struggled with them. She got away and she ran back home. And the person had followed her, that had pursued her, and stuck a note under the door and was like, it was something threatening, like, "I'll still get you, my pretty," or something like that. And Connie Carpenter never spoke publicly ever again about the Mothman or the Men in Black or any of it. Never again. Would not come out and talk about it. Her husband has come out and kind of, he's kind of talked about her, and he's kind of told her story. There was like a big documentary that was made, and she refused to take part, but her husband participated. And he just said she's never been the same. She doesn't leave the house. She won't go out at night.
Wow.
It's very traumatizing to her. So, that's a very interesting, maybe it wasn't the Men in Black. Maybe it was just some dudes trying to kidnap her. Who knows? And she happened to see the Mothman. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, not to get into conjecture just yet, but I think there might be multiple explanations for some of this stuff. I don't think you could find one unified theory that sums up every case. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. I agree. And we're almost there. One more notable sighting I wanted to mention. You asked if there were recent sightings. Yeah, sir. Dan Aykroyd.
Oh, I wondered if you're going to get to this one.
Of course.
Okay.
Dan Aykroyd. He was making a show about aliens or something. I don't even remember exactly. And he walked
It's called
outside.
Out There for Sci-Fi Channel.
Okay.
He was the producer and the narrator.
Okay. And he stepped outside to take a phone call.
Do you know from who?
From Britney Spears.
Yes.
And so he walked
100% medically accurate. That's absolutely right.
medically accurate. So he walks
Thank you.
outside, and there's a dude standing there with a black Ford, I think he said, and all black. That I don't think he said anything to him. I think he just kind of watched him, didn't he? I don't think he said anything.
Yeah, they didn't talk.
And then he went inside, and his show was mysteriously canceled. I guess maybe right then and there. I don't, or a couple days later.
2
Or
hours
something.
later, yeah, they got the phone call to stop shooting. They had already filmed, it was like an 8-episode season, and they had already filmed like 5 of the episodes or something like that.
Mhm.
And they got the phone call from the network that the show had been canceled and stopped filming. And not only that, but they had a sizable amount of it already done, and none of that stuff has been seen either. It just completely disappeared.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And and Dan Aykroyd's a big, he's huge, in the UFO community. Like that's his
yes,
thing. I'd like to get him on the show. So if you guys can like tweet at him or whatever and tell him that he should come on the show, and like we should make this happen and get Dan Aykroyd on to talk about his encounter and his information and what he knows. That'd be sweet. But anyway, um, that's a big one, and I know you want to talk about what is his name? Is it DeLong or DeLonge? How do you say his fucking name?
DeLong. I didn't know he had a Men in Black sighting.
I'm almost positive he had a Men in Black sighting, but I haven't like he's got like a book and shit, doesn't he? I don't know. I haven't really dug into him like that. I'm very aware of his presence. I was a kid and as a teenager in the early 2000s. Of course, I listened to Blink 182, but and I've been there. I think we'll talk about him and we'll talk about people like Aykroyd in a little more detail in another episode. But I'm pretty sure he did have a Men in Black sighting too, or encounter. Um,
I
and that's what got
have
him into this stuff.
I have a random Men in Black story that I'd like to share real quick.
Sure.
So this was I was on YouTube and I was going down a YouTube hole, and this is the comment from one of the videos that I was watching, and this sounds like a legit story, and it was by Matthew Don. I don't know if that's their Christian name or if that's some alias that they use. Mathy space Don, Don, Matthew Don. But on one of these YouTube videos that I was watching, I just happened to go through the comment section, and here is this person sharing this story. That's a
This
story
is
that was
cool.
told to them, and I believe that this story was shared with them. I don't think this was made up. So here's the story. When I was a kid, my eye doctor randomly told me a story about his parents or his aunt and uncle seeing an airplane crash. The next day, some men from the government came to talk to them about it. The plane was small and moving fast, so they figured it was a Navy jet. They figured it was a Navy jet that had a training accident or something. There were 3 visitors at their door soon after. One of the government men had sunglasses, and his mom said his eyes were strange and elongated, although not like an Oriental. His words, sorry, it was the 1980s sigh. So he said his parents offered the men some coffee/tea and some desserts like cake or pudding. She handed the guy with the sunglasses a spoon to eat with, and he held it and rotated it around like he didn't know what it was. The government men asked them some questions, but both of them couldn't remember the specifics of the questions, and soon after the men left, both his parents couldn't remember the details of the crash they saw. My doctor said his parents described it like the way the memory of a dream melts away as you wake up, and the details that seem so vivid when you first wake up fade away, and you're just left with a general sense of the dream. They remembered a few key posts and a sense of the details of the crash and the government men who visited them, but for both of them, it then became a blur. I think the point my doctor was trying to make was about always asking authority figures for their credentials, because he made the point that his parents just assumed the men were from the government and invited them in. They never asked for identification and never saw any insignia, so who knows who they were. So this sounds like a real story to me, and I'll tell you why. Because it's at least maybe this eye doctor was fucking with this kid, but the way that they wrote this seems very conversational, and it just seems like it was related as they were told it and they remember it, right? Um, but using this as a launching point, like obviously by talking about the eyes and the fact that the guy didn't know how to use a spoon or whatever,
Yeah.
he's suggesting that there's something not right with this, right? That they're
Yeah.
otherworldly, they're not human. Okay. which kind of piggies back to the point I made earlier. Since now we're going to try to dissect all this stuff. If these are not government agency, if this is not terrestrial, if these are not humans, and there's some ultra terrestrial explanation, why do they pick and choose where they materialize and harass witnesses? Because they don't do it to everybody.
Well, I wanna circle back for a second on
I
that
keep
story.
dodging the fucking question. All right.
I'm not. We're gonna get into it. We're just not there yet. There's so
Okay.
much about this that I want to share with people. And I'm very excited about this episode. I'll be honest with you. My nipples are so hard. And my clit is just raging.
Engorged, just fucking the size of a cigarette lighter.
But anyway, I want to mention that you're talking about them trying to eat and doing weird things. That is one thing people report a lot about these
Right.
things, is that they don't know how to do normal things. One lady offered them Jello. They didn't really know how to eat it. They don't really know how to use utensils. When they did swallow things, like for example, somebody offered them a steak and they didn't chew it; they just fucking swallowed it like a pelican. And
Or Dan Aykroyd's car, which was the car that he spotted his Men in Black driving, was like this old Cadillac or something, right? It was a car from out of time, which I had my own experience with.
right,
I've told that story a bunch of times about finding that thing in the woods.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I mean excuse me, that kind of makes sense. It suggests that they're using screening memories, or they're just trying to like cover, like psychically project a cover story, or something like that, and they're not quite getting it right. That
Yeah, they're trying.
it's something coming into our reality that's trying to disguise itself as something that it thinks will blend in, and it's getting it about 3/4 right.
Anne said, when we went to the Erie, Pennsylvania event, she she was doing her makeup and she like fucked up her makeup severely, and we're dressed like the Men in Black, and she's like, whatever. She was like, this is a real Men in Black costume. They don't know how to do fucking makeup. I'm
She's
so
right.
proud of her. And
Right.
everybody, if you don't know who Anne is, that's my research. That's the brains behind everything, really. But anyway, I was like, oh my god, she knows the Men in Black are fucking weird. Anyway, yeah, I mean, they just seem very out of place. I'll mention that some people report seeing them in a black Volkswagen, which is interesting because of their ties to the Point Pleasant area and the Mothman sightings, and back to Indrid Cold, because Indrid and the gang were said to drive a black Volkswagen. It was actually an big integral part of the story, which I have no idea why I've never asked Tanya about it, but I will. I mean, I'll ask her. Hey,
Did I
what about
tell
that?
you she messages me on Facebook now?
Yeah, we talked about that.
Okay.
She's been very social lately. Good for her.
She's
Good,
very
good for
nice.
you, Tanya. I'm very glad that you feel comfortable in this community, and you guys absolutely should welcome this woman with open arms.
And me. Message me on Facebook. I like it. I like it when
Message
people
Pat O.
really
Talk to him.
Yes.
He is starved for attention. I'm just kidding.
You have
Just be
no
nice to
idea.
us. We like to talk to you guys, believe it or not, even though it doesn't seem like it from me on Facebook. I like to talk about this stuff, and I like to talk to you
Right.
guys, and I like to hear from you. But anyway, so that was just another interesting thing. Before we get into what I know exactly what you want to get into, I think I encountered a Men in Black.
Okay.
I think I did. And I'm almost positive I've told this story here. If not, I've told it on other shows before. So I've shared my UFO story, how I saw my first UFO. I was 18. I was outside smoking at 3 o'clock in the morning, looked like giant headlights, scared me to death. Maybe within 2 years later, I came upon a post on Craigslist. It was allegedly a film student working on a film about UFOs. He was looking
Oh,
for
that's
people.
right.
He was
Yeah.
looking for people that had UFO stories. So we sat down at a coffee shop. I went with my husband. The guy was very plain. Can't remember any detail about him, but I told him my story. That's fine, right? People, I live in Dayton, Ohio. We got a big film school here. Wright State University is a big film school. And, that's believable. That's a believable story. Except for probably about another 3 years later, I'm on Craigslist again because I didn't learn my lesson the first time. And I see the same exact fucking post. Now, granted, it's not like I had the previous post saved anywhere, right? I didn't have it verbatim what was said, but it was the same fucking scenario. I'm a film student at Wright State University. I'm making a movie about UFO encounters. I'm looking for people with encounters. And it's just I mean, and that's it, really. That's where the story ends. Now, was this a Men in Black? I don't know. Was this a guy maybe putting on a front that he was a film student because he didn't want to look weird interviewing people about their UFO? And maybe he was making a UFO documentary. I really to this day still don't know, but it's hard to really come up with a good explanation. I've never found the documentary. So maybe he never finished it. Who knows? It was just very weird. But in modern times, in the modern day, I'll notate this. Not all of the Men in Black sightings were actually men wearing old timey black suits. Some of them describe them as wearing very regular people clothes, and if their job is to kind of blend into society, then maybe they're just getting better at their job. Um,
In the Bible, they're wearing robes.
and the is okay, is that a thing? I don't know. Yeah.
That's what my notes are on. You don't
Oh,
have biblical stories concerning Men in Black as part of
oh,
your notes for this week?
no, I did not include that. But
Oh,
thank you for
I go
including
way back. I go pre 1940.
I'm glad that you included that. That Alan Greenfield, everybody, he's an interesting character. But yeah, I mean, so let's talk about it some more. Let's continue. Pat,
Okay.
you
My-
are very curious as to why they're picking and choosing and we're not having a whole outbreak of Men in Black sightings, right?
That was just so when I was trying to, if you look at this from the top down, the first schism that you get within the Men in Black phenomenon is, are they FBI or
Right.
are they
Are they human or
other
not?
Yes, okay, perfect, right? This is a great way to summarize it. And if you agree that they're human, one of the things that I think lends credence to that tree of thought is the fact that we don't see a visit from the Men in Black associated with every single UAP sighting. There's only some of the bigger ones, or one where there's debris retrieved, right, or something like that. Then you get these visitors showing up, and there's no hard fast rule about what type of UFO sighting is gonna cause a visit from the Men in Black. So that to me, it's kind of asymmetrical. It's kind of lopsided. It happens when it happens. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. That to me seems that it's more terrestrial based, more human based, because it's an agency responding to something where they know and they know who the witnesses are,
Sure.
right? I think that if you are of the school of thought that they're non-human, then you'd have to ask, well, okay, so they obviously have supernatural abilities and they can materialize and appear whenever they want. Why are they choosing to harass some witnesses and not others?
Yeah. I
So, and
agree with that.
I'm not saying that that's like irrefutable proof that they're human. I'm just saying that when you kind of take it like, what's step all right, step one, human or non. Well, if you look at it like that, then logically you're more likely that they're human and that these are just these sightings. They're not, assuming everybody's telling the truth.
Sure.
These sightings kind of suggest that it is a response from a government agency or some type of earthly agency.
Right. And I agree with that. I have, personally questioned the existence of Men in Black because even though I say I think I may have encountered one, why haven't I encountered one since then? You know.
Right. And especially like in your case, and once again, I kind of said this earlier, there could be multiple explanations at play here. What, like, if you look at like Dan Aykroyd's story, right? The phenomenon that he reports seems very otherworldly when he talks about his sighting of the Men in Black.
Yeah.
This car appears out of nowhere. It's very old timey. It's very out of place. There's this mysterious figure that looks human, but is also kind of odd for being a human. And they're there, and then they disappear, and blah blah blah. But the network canceling his show 2 hours later. Well, Jesus, are the Men in Black in bed with the Sci-Fi Channel? How does
Right.
that work? That seems
Right.
like something that maybe the FBI could do or the government can do, but I don't know about aliens. I mean, unless they have, who? I mean, just think about that for a second, right?
Well, because like Sci-Fi puts out, there's tons of UFO shit on TV. There's a whole entire series about it called Ancient Aliens.
Right.
You know why
Is
is it?
that why the plug got pulled on your show, Dan Aykroyd? Because the fucking aliens did it, not because you were producing shit, right? No, it must be fucking, beings from Alpha Centauri that fucking pulled the plug on your show because they're in bed with all the cable networks, right? Like, yeah. Think about that for a second.
Right.
So I think like what Aykroyd's suggesting, I don't think he's trying to contradict himself, but if you really take a step back and look at it, he kind of is. Are they aliens? Or is it the government? Because if it's the government, you can understand how they could shut down a TV show. If they're aliens, that's like, what are you even? Okay, so maybe they have the aliens showed up at the president of Sci-Fi Channel's house and were like, cancel Dan Aykroyd's show, or uh, what's the fucking explanation there? I don't even know. Like, let's hear it. Like, what is it? What does he think? I'm not asking you to fucking come up with something, but I mean, like, really, like, how does that play out? So, are the two things working in bed together? Is did the aliens say to their human counterparts, "You guys need to shut down this show. This is too dangerous. He's getting too deep into things." Right? I
I
don't know.
mean,
And you're right. There's so much alien content out there on cable. Why was this show canceled?
right. Why? I mean,
What
it's not like we don't have other
19
documentaries.
seasons of Ancient Aliens and
Right.
stuff?
I
Yeah.
mean, is it just that all of those other things out there, all of the media out there, all of them are wrong? All of them have gotten it wrong? What about
It's
the,
state approved disinformation, and what Aykroyd was doing was so dangerous, so punk rock, so off the cuff that it had to be silenced.
so what was it that he was doing, as he said?
I don't know, but you know what? that would
Get him on
that
the
should be the
show.
first thing he's talking about. Yeah.
He
What
needs to
did you?
come on.
Okay. So yeah, your show got shit canned. What did you talk about on it?
Right.
Like, because obviously there's something there, and you might not know exactly what it is, but let's just run down the list. What was episode 1 about? What did you talk about episode 2? Who'd you interview? What'd they say? You know?
Right. What you have coming up planned? What were these concepts? And then in that case, okay, so you got people like Dan Aykroyd that got a show canceled because again, maybe he just had it right on the money. He was a little too close to being right. And he had a legit thing going on. So then what about people like Tanya Derenberger? Are we then saying that she's not her experience didn't happen? Is that the implication here? Because I have very good reason to believe that it did. Are we saying that like I didn't encounter the moth because these guys were chasing people that saw the Mothman. So you're trying to say I didn't see the Mothman because you didn't come
Right.
visit me and talk to me about it. When I have a show and I'm publicly now, granted, I'm not Dan Aykroyd, or we're not the Sci-Fi Channel, but we will gladly do a show for the Sci-Fi Channel if you guys want. But still, I mean, I have an audience, I got a platform, I'm sharing all this information. Am I wrong? Am I off kilter
Yo,
about my
Jeremiah
theories?
Byron is a fucking CIA plant, and I've been saying this since goddamn day one.
He's a Men in Black. Jeremiah's
This
a
is
fucking Men in Black.
now. Hold on. Let me explain that joke because that joke actually has a lot to do with this phenomenon. As someone that's read a whole bunch, I'm more of a conspiracy guy, right? Like that's
Mhm.
kind of what I've read the most on. And if you've read enough about conspiracies, then you know that something that the CIA does very regularly is insert operatives into organizations just to keep an eye on things, right? Now, sometimes it turns into something bigger where you have like, them infiltrating the Black Panther Party or Occupy Wall Street to nudge these organizations to chaos and discredit them, right? Sometimes or violence and have them whatever. And sometimes you have like the Charles Manson stuff with MK Ultra and all that shit. But you would think that in the paranormal community or the cryptozoology community and all the podcasts that we produce amongst all of us, all of our friends, right? All of this little loosely knit fucking cabal that we have, right? You would think that out of somebody somewhere, and maybe it's not me and you, and maybe it's not Jeremiah, maybe it's not Kinsey or fucking Aaron Dees or anything, but somewhere on some level, there's somebody that's fucking on retainer with the fucking government.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
And you think it's probably Jeremiah.
I just get cop vibes from him, but it's because that's because he's got his shit together.
I mean,
Like he's
Bigfoot
too well
Society
organized.
is strictly an interview podcast, so I mean that could make sense. He's gathering these stories to figure out who he needs to
Right.
silence and who he. Has anybody that's been on a show ever died? Should
Oh,
we?
I don't think it's about silencing. I think it's about just getting people to spill their guts. They're interrogations. They're not interviews. I think that's all it is. I think he's just picking people's brains. And then if anybody gets it right or gets too close to the mark, then they get visited in the middle of the night by somebody. But
Literally every fucking time Pat hears Jeremiah talk, he's instantly messages me, "This guy's fucking CIA." Every time.
and I only half believe that. I don't let it.
No, Jeremiah's for it though. Like he's into this. He
Oh
loves
no, me and him go back and forth about it on Instagram all the time. But like, I'm not trying to besmirch the guy's name. If you're listening to this show and you're somebody that he contacts to do an interview with, 100% just go on the show. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to say like don't do it. You know, I know that's the reason he's never had me on his show is because he fucking.
Is that what the membership cards are? Do you think he's like?
Oh, there's RFID trackers in those fucking things. I swear to God. I swear to God. What? Oh, you want me to put this thing in my wallet, Jeremiah Byron, and carry it with me wherever the fuck I go? All right, bro. Okay. Sure. Let me just give you my Apple password too while I'm fucking at it. You know. No, he's a good dude.
He's
I do.
great.
I do.
No,
I love him. I admire the guy. And listen to the interview we did with him. You could hear the admiration in my voice when I'm talking to the guy. 100%
no, he's
no
wonderful.
bullshit.
Yeah.
Yes, but he's CIA. I mean, 100%. Like he's a cop. He's a fucking cop. You know, but he's living proof that not all cops are bastards. I will say that too. He's a very good guy.
Maybe the secret agent is me.
You know what? That would explain a couple different things.
It's not me, but maybe it is.
I mean, you got to keep an open mind. Don't think it can't be a girl.
Yeah, don't trust.
Don't be sexist.
Random. Don't trust strangers on the internet, you guys. It could be me.
You would be more effective because men would drop their defenses around you, and people would be willing to talk to you a lot easier.
Women in general, I think, are I hate gender roles, but I mean, I think they're usually considered easier to talk to. So yeah,
they have value in the field, 100%.
You know, I think it would make sense for it to be. Well, actually, Nick Redfern, who's another big person within this community, he's written 3 books about the Men in Black. One of them is about women in black.
Yeah, now I think it's you. I wish you hadn't said that because you fucked up our whole dynamic now.
Never trust me ever again.
I mean, I will because I'm fucking damaged like that.
Yeah, it's
no,
fine.
I mean it just doesn't. If you think that it means that I'm gonna be, I have such bad fucking like boundary issues.
Oh, same. It's fine.
It doesn't. You can be the worst
that on the
person in the world for me. Yeah, bleep that shit out. Yeah.
But yeah, it is what it is. But anyway, yeah, I mean it very well could be. I mean, I just think that they would obviously have to adjust with the times. And that's not the only, there are modern day Men in Black encounters. Nothing as notable that I thought was as notable or as sexy as the ones that I shared, but they do still happen. But then why don't they happen to everybody? And,
Well,
where's the line?
Can I get into some of my pre-1940s? Because I took the time to write this shit up. I know you're not going to want to tolerate it, but just bear with me.
Now listen, Pat, you have a voice too. You're allowed to use it.
Thank you. So yes, one of the things talked about in the Complete Secret Cipher of the UFO Knots by Alan Greenfield, you correctly called it. I am getting this information from the fucking book. Is okay. First of all, one thing that I talked about, which ties into last week's episode about the Mer people, is that it talks about the theory of they're the Onis, OANNES, which are supposed to be beings that came down from heaven and that lived in the Persian Gulf. They were aquatic human hybrids. They lived in the Persian Gulf and would come out of the water during the day to teach mankind arts and sciences, and then would return to the water at night. And this is like ancient Mesopotamia. So early examples of Mer people that were aliens that lived in the water and came out and would fucking share their knowledge with mankind. So
which is not far off from some of the reports that we get, especially with the UAP disclosure. Most of those reports are coming from the Navy. So, just to mention that.
Right. Well, that was something that I came across online, was the important distinction that we've seen the Navy's files. The Navy's the one releasing all this information, but not necessarily the Air Force. Although that's always kind of a weird, like if you watch Top Gun, that's about the Navy. They're Navy pilots because they launch off of aircraft carriers.
Yeah.
But then, or they launch off of aircraft carriers that are in the sea. So that's considered Navy.
Well,
But
and the Air Force, they're the ones that run the. I mean, that's where you get Project Blue Book, and that's where they study that stuff, so they can't really disclose all of it because they're the ones investigating it.
and you would know because you're a fucking spook.
I might be,
You learned all this at Quantico, didn't you?
maybe.
But going back to some of the other stuff. So there's like, I guess when you start looking at the Men in Black phenomenon, there's people try to retrofit it into stuff that's existed before. Okay. And the two examples that I wanted to talk about is one, biblical stories, right? Because what's interesting is that you have a lot of, and this is stuff that's gaining traction now, but there's a lot of recently there's been a lot of emphasis on biblically accurate angels, right? Which are these crazy multi-winged, multi-eyed human animal hybrid beings that are super crazy looking, right?
Yeah, I think Mothman's one.
And that's how these beings are described in the Bible. But then you have these other encounters with angels where they're completely human and they pass for human, right? You have like the story of like Sodom and Gomorrah, where the angels come to Lot, who was living in Sodom, and they were human, but they were kind of odd looking, and the people in town all came to Lot's house because they wanted to fuck these, they call them angels, right? But basically they were kind of like, I don't want to say like Men in Black, but they were human beings that were otherworldly, but they were in human form, more than when you look at like how the seraphim, the cherubim are described in the Bible, which are six wings and fucking a million eyes and all this shit, right? So what's the distinction between some angels, which are completely like abominations of fucking matter, and then these other ones that are more human, right? And then in Aleister Crowley, he wrote one of the books that he wrote was called the Book of Law, and supposedly this book was written when he was on his honeymoon, and he was on his honeymoon in Cairo, Egypt, and this being who he called Awas, Aiwass,
Hmm.
who seemed to be a tall, dark man in his 30s, well knit, active, and strong, with the face of a savage king and eyes veiled lest their gaze should destroy what they saw. And there's a picture that he drew of this creature. So what happened was this being would come to him every day at noon and transcribe and give him this, like, kind of like talk to him and give him this book that he would write down. And that's what turned into his Book of Law, right? Which you can buy on Amazon for like fucking $5. And I haven't read it yet, so I can't tell you what it's about. But my point is that all this information was related to him by this being, this human being that would, or humanoid being that would come to him. And not only, so it's described as being dark, but also the picture that he drew has, you would say like the Asian facial features, kind of. It looks kind of like a gray, but a very humanoid gray, not like the huge bulging black eyes, but like still oddly shaped eyes, which is something that's attributed to a lot of the Men in Black, and was even in the YouTube post that I read earlier. Okay, that's kind of like a recurring theme sometimes, is that they have Asian like eyes, um, and that's kind of interesting because you have, yeah, being visited by dark humanoid beings, I mean, even has connections as far back as the shadow people, right? That people feel like, they experience sometimes during sleep paralysis. Like, I don't know how much we want to connect the dots with this stuff, but I feel like there's enough metaphysical and kind of like, you could almost make an argument for them being magical and not necessarily alien. Like, they're not necessarily something that's coming here from another planet. Like, they didn't fly here on a craft from another moon or some shit. They're not from Nibiru, you know? Like, these could be entities that kind of come through to our reality and try to take on the visage of whatever they feel is appropriate at the time. And what's interesting is that that can change over the years, depending on where we're at culturally, number one. But number two, that they are kind of menacing, right? Like their experience with Crowley was like, okay, they're imparting information that was kind of positive. And when they visit Lot and Sodom, it's to kind of warn him to get the fuck out of town before God, using air quotes, destroys the city of cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, presumably to kill off the giants. But when you look at them in modern context, I mean, they're canceling Dan Aykroyd's TV show, they're threatening witnesses. They're not exactly a positive thing, right? And it's kind of interesting that like they have all this power, but yet to like do this stuff, to like kind of come into our reality and to threaten us, but they're still not necessarily harming us. Like that story that you told about the kidnapping was, it's very like unique. You know what I mean? They're usually just talking shit. The fact that they physically tried to restrain someone and capture them and take them somewhere else, I mean, maybe that happens more than we know of, and it's just a disappearance, and we don't know that the Men in Black were involved. All right,
Right.
which is a terrifying thought, but it's like, it kind of goes back to like when we talk about the abduction phenomenon, and like, it's interesting that like the grays or these aliens can come and they can shut us down and they can do these experiments, but they're not wiping us out. It seems like there is some fear. There was some, anytime you hear a conspiracy theory that has to do with like them making a pact with the government, well, why would they even need to ask permission, right? If they're that powerful, maybe they're not. Maybe there's rules here that we don't quite fully grasp, that the Men in Black are governed by. You know what I mean? They're intimidating and they're scary, but they're not all powerful. You know what I mean?
Well, and sometimes, I mean, people threaten people, sometimes the threat is enough, and they assume it's enough. Or, maybe there are a lot more Men in Black sightings than we know about, and they did their job effectively. Or, like you said, maybe they are kidnapping people. And we don't know because it's not like they're going to come out and be like, "Hey, we're the Men in Black and we kidnap people."
Right.
They're not going to
You know
admit
those
to it.
disappearances? Yeah, a percentage of that is us.
Well, me and Tobias talked about one time how just kind of, just talking about how you get these stories sent into you. And whenever you try to kind of pry for more information, you might get a random email or message or something. And you'll get these random encounters, these random stories people have. And when you try to respond and you get more out of them, they just ghost and they're gone. And is that because they were visited by the Men in Black and the Men in Black are like, no, you can't share this. Or maybe it's just because they're lying, and who knows why. It's just like with Hellier, to bring it up, the whole Terry Riss situation. Who was that guy? Maybe he ended up encountering the Men in Black and they threatened him, and that's why he fucking skipped town. Maybe people are scared away by these things, and maybe it is effective, and that's why not everybody comes out and talks about it. Um, I don't know. I mean, when you talk about, of course, we already know my stance on the whole magic and religion thing, and it's not my bag. But um,
What do you mean?
it's not
I
my.
mean, I know you're not like religious, but like you don't think magic is real?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, I think that there's a science to some of the magic, but I don't think that there's like to the degree that like Crowley believed in magic. Absolutely not. That guy was terrible. He was basically a cult leader, and I'm not a big fan. But I can't completely write off and say that every single thing that he shared was incorrect because there might be some truth to some of it. I don't think that there's, like you were saying, these people aren't traveling from a distant planet. I disagree with that. I think that the universe is big enough for all of us, and I think that they probably do come from somewhere. They just travel differently, which is what makes them ultimately interdimensional. I think that that's probably what they are, is interdimensional. But I think there is still science to it. I don't think it's because they are spiritual, because I don't believe in spirituality like that. Um, it's a weird. I believe in like the law of attraction because it's it's been tried and true and tested, against science, and it is a very real thing that happens. But I don't know if that's just because it's a placebo for your mind to work harder towards the things that you want or what, but it is real. But I don't believe, in magic the way that a lot of people believe in magic, I guess. So I don't know. Anyway, that's a whole conversation for a whole nother day. I don't think that I think there could be ancient ties to these beings. That's assuming that they aren't human. I don't personally think that there's a government body that is particularly, just like in the Men in Black movies, I don't think there's a government body that is cut out to have humans go from place to place to silence people. I think that you can be visited by government officials and they are interested in your stories. We've actually seen that happen. Again, let's reference Project Blue Book. We know that they investigate this stuff, but I don't think that they're silencing anybody. I know when Woody Derenberger was visited by the officials from Wright Pat Air Force Base, they didn't tell him not to talk about it. They just asked him questions. They just said, "Hey, we believe you. We just want to know what you know." And so we see that a lot. But if people are being visited by these creatures, I mean, you'd have to think. I mean, what's the motive? Why would they want us to not talk about it? What are they hiding? I don't know. There's a lot to it, but there are some really credible stories that I just can't write off. I'm not saying that I don't believe in the Men in Black, but I can't fully endorse that I do quite yet.
I think, yeah, I'm not so sure that they're native from a different planet. I think if you want my armchair explanation of all this, I think that it's two things. I think there's a percentage of them that are government boogeymen, that they could be investigating a phenomenon as well, an incursion in our reality from an outside source, and they find witnesses that maybe saw too much or have physical evidence, and they will intercede and try to silence those people and collect the evidence that they have because they're trying to figure it out themselves, right? So, not necessarily the Men in Black like the movie where they're in cahoots with all these different aliens, but definitely the Men in Black, like, we're talking about the OSS or the X Files, where they're one step behind this phenomenon as well, trying to figure it out. And if you look at where we're at right now with disclosure, either we're being treated to a whole slew of carefully fucking, articulated disinformation, or we're starting to find out the government really wasn't running the fucking show like we thought they were, right? That we thought that the government knew a whole bunch and was hiding a whole bunch. And now we're finding out all they were hiding is how little they fucking knew.
Yeah,
If any of that stuff's to be believed, and it's questionable, you should question everything.
sure.
That's part about being a thinking human being,
Yeah,
rhetoric. So, but I think that there's a part of it that could be incursions from other intelligences in our reality. And I don't necessarily think that it's magic in the ceremonial sense, but I think it's magic in the same way that a technology greater than our own seems like magic. If you went back in time with a
yes,
fucking iPhone
yes.
and a lighter,
I
I mean,
subscribe
you
to
go
that.
far enough
Yeah.
back and a Bic lighter, the size of your very clit, would be seen as fucking magical to some civilizations if you go back far enough. If you go back 300 fucking 100 years, 150 years,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? A
Oh, yeah.
Bic lighter would seem like fucking you were a fireball throwing wizard, you know? So, that's my hot take on it, is that, I think some of these are just the government trying to figure out what the fuck's going on, and they're wearing black suits because it was the 1950s and men wore suits to go to the grocery store. Well, they wouldn't go to the grocery store, that's what they had women for, but you know what I mean. Men wore suits everywhere, so having a guy in a black suit, a good G-man, asking questions after a UFO sighting, it was probably a little unnerving, and maybe they made it that way intentionally, but wasn't necessarily mystical or otherworldly or paranormal. And then I think there's stuff where no, those are that's a monster coming through to our reality, trying to figure out how to blend in or something and doing a piss poor job at it.
Just bad at it.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, like that's kind of wholesome. I find that really wholesome that like they don't know how to do things like use this fork.
Right.
I think it's kind of adorable. But that's how you know if it's a Men in Black. If they don't know what the fuck they're doing at all. Just some people reported like, silly things. Somebody reported trying to give one a handshake, and it was very confused by the handshake, and it had no idea what to do with that. And
Mhm.
so try to shake everybody's hand, and also like the one guy's tale with his eye doctor, ask for their credentials and see what happens there. But yeah, I don't, I just haven't quite made up my mind yet. I mean, like I said, I hear these stories, like the Connie Carpenter case. I think she was legitimately traumatized, and again, could it have just been two separate incidences where she saw the Mothman's face and it fucked with her, and then she also somebody tried to kidnap her? Sure, absolutely. The mystery photographers I find really interesting as well, but the mystery photographers seem to have a couple. I mean, there's an easy explanation for that. I mean, but people say, and that's kind of where they get the in the Men in Black movie they have like the memory eraser, and it's like a big
Mhm.
flash. That's what people say they're getting their picture by taking by these people's like. It's a really weird, extra bright light that like burns your eyeballs out. But then again, like you ever stood in front of a camera while the flash went off? I mean, it's bright and it sucks for a minute. It's just you ever walk outside and it's really bright out there and your eyeballs are like ah. I don't see much of a difference. I think that it does make sense for them to be like journalists stopping by to take a picture of scenes of the events that are happening at the time. I mean, I think that a lot of them. I agree with Keel. A lot of them could be misidentified. Again, we know that because Keel was misidentified as one.
Right. And like aliens with cameras, like fucking what?
Right, for
Like,
what purpose?
why do they have a camera like that? There's so many things where like it just it doesn't make sense.
One guy said he came home and one of them was inside of his house and he kind of saw it and it was dark in the house and it took a picture of him and the flash went off and he couldn't see and it disappeared. But nothing was stolen. But then again, I mean, if you're just a robber breaking into a house and like you don't have a gun, it's just creative robbing, right? Just get a fucking camera with flash and flash their eyeballs out and run away. I mean,
But why would an alien? But think about it like this: why would the alien need to do that? Why would the alien need to break into his house when he wasn't home and look around, and then make a hasty getaway when it can just fucking zip in and out of reality? If it wanted to catch the guy at home, it would have caught the guy at home, and when he came home, he would have fucking popped away. Why did he need to cover his tracks? Why did he need to throw down the proverbial smoke bomb?
yeah,
Only a human would need to do that, right?
right.
So you're talking about human behavior here. Now, the flash temporarily blinding him so the other guy can get away. Maybe that wasn't a camera. Maybe it was a prop that had a flashbang component to it. Maybe there's some fucking spy James Bond technology at foot here. Who knows? But that sounds terrestrial to me. Okay,
Yeah.
I think there's when you look at enough of these stories you can kind of sort through like maybe that was actually the government poking around because of something. But once again, then you got to form the narrative in your head of like what kind of what's the, because we don't even know what the game is yet. We don't have confirmation of what's officially happening. So it's like we're seeing symptoms of things, not to borrow a phrase from Hellier, but we're seeing symptoms of things and trying to like figure out what the disease is, figure out what the cause is, right? What could be going on that has these two forces actively acting independently of one another, or are they in cahoots together, right? Is there some kind of joint outside otherworldly intelligence government thing going on here where some of the men in black are human and some of them are alien and they're going out in the field and doing this shit, you know? Does
Or
that
do
sound
neither of them exist at all?
and all these people are just lying? I don't believe that.
I don't believe that either.
Yeah. No.
I'm not one to believe that. Maybe some people were, but not all of them. Like I said, it's just some of them. That's another thing. I was in a discussion with somebody on social media earlier this week about, just some big theories about how some of the stuff works, and eyewitness accounts as much as we know that humans aren't great at recanting every single detail, Nothing will make you a believer. If you haven't experienced the real thing, I highly encourage you to sit down with somebody who has had their entire life altered by one of these experiences. And then at the end of it, walk away saying, I don't believe them, because you can't.
Right.
And I feel like that is especially the case with some of these UFO stories. I like the Bender story, because I feel like, the guy finally found his calling and then just fucking up and quit. And when you backtrack on his whole life, I mean, it seemed like, he just like how we grew up weird kids liking weird shit, and now we do stuff like this. I can't imagine ever quitting. There's no force on this planet that would make me quit, except if I genuinely felt like my life was in danger. And then I'd probably bitch out. But just to be honest, I probably would. Um, you know, so, and I think that that's a very similar situation. I guess unless maybe he ended up, developing some type of mental illness later in life, but nothing really points to that. It all points to the fact that he quit out of fear because he genuinely thought that these beings were coming after him and following him and ready to attack him if he continued his work. And I just think that that's the most powerful piece of evidence we have right now. There's allegedly pictures, but I mean, gosh, people dress up in black suits.
Right, especially yeah. There's lots of videos on YouTube where it's like, oh, is this a Men in
Right.
Black caught on security camera? It's like, or it's a guy in fucking a suit, and
Some
sunglasses. I
guys
don't
in a
know.
suit, right? Maybe they were dressing like the Men in Black that day. I mean, people do
Right.
that. I did that. People do that.
Black
Um,
suits are very. If you don't know what to wear, you wear a black suit. You're going to a court case. You're going to a funeral. You're going to a wedding. You know what I mean? It's kind of like your go-to.
dressing
A
like the
lot,
Blues
especially for
Brothers.
like white people. Like that's not being
Yeah,
racist.
that's
I think
true.
it's like boring white people just wear black suits.
Right.
You know.
And they're wearing glasses. I mean, and maybe they wear the glasses because underneath them they have glowing, crazy eyes and no eyebrows and fucked up facial features. Or maybe they're just wearing sunglasses because they're standing around out fucking side and it's bright.
I'm from Chicago. That look is just called dressing like the Blues Brothers.
It's the
It's
Blues. Yeah, it's the Blues
fucking
Brothers. Right. I mean, people do that.
starring Dan Aykroyd. Oh, it's all coming fucking full circle.
Makes sense now, huh?
All right.
But yeah, again, I can't give a solid opinion. I would like, just like I'd like to believe that Nessie's a plesiosaur, I'd like to believe that the Men in Black exist and that all these stories are real. But I can't tell you professionally that they are or that they do.
I would ask our listeners that if you come across any modern day Men in Black encounters, send them our way because I would like to see where this is at now. Because everything that we came across seems kind of dated. It seems like something that's not really happening anymore. Which
Well, Nick
you know,
Redfern's 3 books. He's got 3 books on it.
yeah, that he wrote now, but like, how many cases did we talk about today that were pre 2005? None. You know what I mean? Everything we talked about was earlier, was at least was 17 years old if not more. The Dan Aykroyd thing was kind of the most recent one and that was even fucking questionable because you're like, "What are you talking about, Dan? What are you trying to say?" Like your shit just didn't get canceled. You know what I mean? Like, all right. Yeah, I guess it was aliens or your show sucked. I don't know. I don't want to. Not that I want to talk shit about Dan Aykroyd. I've met him a bunch. He's actually a really nice guy. But like, like I said, I made my point about that story earlier. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think is Men in Black not a thing? Did not happen as much as mobile phones. How did that change the game? How did that change for if you're an outside intelligence trying to fucking intimidate people, but now everyone's got a cell phone in their pocket. Like, does that change the way you conduct yourself? Does
Yeah.
that change why it feels like abductions aren't a thing anymore either? And I know I've talked about that on the show. It feels like abductions were huge in the 80s and 90s, and now they've kind of dropped off. Are people not being abducted as much? Did they accomplish whatever their goals were? Is the program moved on to stage 4, which doesn't include abductions, now it includes something else? Are the Men in Black no longer in play? These aspects of the phenomenon that are there and then kind of not so much. I don't know.
I disagree with some of those things, but I can understand why you're skeptical. Again, lots of reading material with this stuff, and that's the thing about it is like you can't. And that's another. I didn't even mention that you can't just Google Men in Black. Like you can't just do that and hope for the best.
Right, there's too many other distractors.
like Will Smith
Right.
and Tommy Lee Jones. And, but and I thought that was interesting. I kind of had a theory about that for a while because they did go on and make a movie. Knowing what you know after, because that's how I was introduced to the Men in Black. Because as you guys all know, I was an avid Will Smith fan, and until he smacked the shit out of Chris Rock. And anyway, I'm not gonna get into that. But no, that's how I knew about it was because Men in Black was a big deal when it came out, and they made fucking Happy Meal toys with the Men in Black stuff, and they made it seem so cool. But I didn't know at that time that that was a real thing. I didn't know that was a real phenomenon because I was too young to be into that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So it took a long time. Is it because they were trying to kind of normalize these guys, or because they wanted some type of media footprint so that way if you did, I mean, the internet was really just becoming a thing at that point in time, because if you did search it on the internet it would come up with the movie, because that's what you'll get if you Google Men in Black. That's what comes up. If you type it into YouTube, that's what comes up. um
That is interesting. Like, for some reason, Dan Aykroyd's show was gonna blow up. Was was gonna fucking blow the lid off more stuff than straight up calling a Hollywood blockbuster Men in Black.
yeah,
Like, the interest that that would create, just like accidentally, like tangentially, right? Because like people are gonna like think about it. This movie's that big. People are gonna look in, and it was based on a comic book too.
yeah,
So people are gonna look into it, right? They're gonna. Don't you think that like something like that would actually bring more people to the phenomenon? And yet it was allowed to happen. Why was it allowed to happen? Well, is it allowed to happen because if you look into the phenomenon, you find out that the Men in Black are some fearsome entity that, unexplained, and they should be feared and all this other stuff. Maybe that's because they thought it would help perpetuate their rep. Or is when the Men in Black movie started to take off, is that when we saw the sightings of them decrease because they realized the jig is up. We need to find another avenue for doing this shit.
or because they were trying to, I mean, it's just kind of like when I tell you I'm a Men in Black, right? And then I go, because I'm admitting that I'm a Men in Black, you're not going to believe that I am one, but really I am. It's kind of the same thing. So because we put it out there publicly that this exists, kind of mocking the audience, if we acknowledge it, then that means
You
you
need to
don't believe
quit
that it's real.
suggesting that you work for the fucking government, because I'm gonna get a highlighter and start to believe this shit.
I don't work for the I don't make enough money to work for the government.
That's the fucking
Yeah,
cover. I don't know what's in your fucking bank account. I
that's
don't.
true.
You know what I mean? Like,
A couple million just in case I need to
yeah,
cut
I
and
could
run
put
at
on a
any time.
T-shirt with cat hair on it when people are around, and then fucking, and then, you know, drive, do
Yeah,
whatever in my off time.
that
Like,
makes sense. No, it's I don't work for the government, but
off of, yeah, okay.
that's what I'm saying, right? So maybe that's what the introduction. Maybe they put it out there because here's another thing about like the Men in Black movie. They put it out there because they wanted to make them appear friendly, so that way, if you did have a visit from the Men in Black, the actual Men in Black, you wouldn't think that they were threatening to go and tell people. You'd think that they were trying to help you, and then you'd relay their story, and they'd go, "Listen." Maybe they thought that being intimidating was not working for people, scaring the shit out of people wasn't working, so they're like, "Just don't talk to anybody about this. We'll help you out." If you play Mr. Nice Cop, then people are more willing to work with you. Also, when the third movie came out, there was a viral marketing that took place where there was a billboard that actually had a phone number for people to call. And if you called that phone number, it was encouraged for you to share your stories of alien activity.
Yeah, so if you look at what the CIA has tried to accomplish in the past with disinformation campaigns, it's exactly this.
Right.
It's not necessarily to convince you from story A to story B. It's just to make you so fucking confused that you don't know what's real anymore.
Right.
It's to make you so fucking, your head so turned, like you start out believing wholeheartedly this is what's going on. And if the disinformation campaign is worth its salt, by the end of it, you're not going to think, oh, this untrue thing is what's going on. You're just not going to know in general. And maybe that was the whole thing of the Men in Black, was like, you
Right.
know what, we're just going to spin it around so that people are, because you could say the same thing about JFK. If JFK was really fucking killed by members of our government or the mafia or whatever, right, and they went through these great lengths to silence all those witnesses, then why the fuck are they making movies and TV shows and three-part specials about the JFK assassination constantly, right? Why it's got to be the worst kept secret at this point,
Right.
unless maybe they make you want to be fucking afraid, and it's a kind of like, hey, look at what we did in the past, and we basically got away with it, you know. Don't fuck with us, Barack Obama. We'll have you assassinated, or you better do this, or if we can kill Kennedy, who can't we get to, And everyone will just look the other way. So I don't know. That's the thing about conspiracies and disinformation is that once that thing opens up, it gets real fucking messy,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And,
It sends
and
your brain into a loop. And then, like you said, you get confused and you're like, you know what? Fuck it. This is exhausting. I'm going to go watch
and that's it. And then you
Men in
stop
Black.
giving a shit.
Yeah.
And anything you thought you knew, you question now, and you don't fucking care, and you go back to watching Wheel of Fortune.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
Exactly. I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. So, I don't know. Just like I said, very interesting things to note about the Men in Black. But what I was getting into before we went on the tangent about the movies, is that there are good books on it. Um, read The Flying Saucers and the Three Men. Read Gray Barker's They Knew Too Much. Read Nick Redfern's he's got, I believe, three of them, three Men in Black books. Just Nick Redfern's such a big name. Just Google the guy. You'll fucking find him. It's easy. There is good reading material on it. Not necessarily stuff that you'll just find openly if you Google. You really got to kind of dig on some of these topics. And I think that the Men in Black is definitely one of them. But there is more source material out there. Google some of these stories that we kind of talked about because aside from just the Men in Black stuff, I mean, they were really interesting. Of course, the original, the Tacoma, the what is it, the Maury Island incident, whole rabbit hole there, whole rabbit hole with Albert Bender and his saga. Of course, the Mothman, all very notable stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's all we got, right? You got anything else?
I got nothing.
Okay. Well, then on that note, guys, we'll see you back here next Wednesday.